Welcome to Expertise Unleashed. I'm Brian.
And I'm Michelle.
And today we're going to talk about distractions.
Distractions can be destructive if you don't really, kind of take it to heart and really kind of jump on, what it is that is distracting you or keeping you from doing the things that you say that you want to do. And so I'm looking forward to this topic of us, really kind of drilling down into it because I think it's going to be helpful for people.
I think at a certain point in time, all of us have been distracted, whether it was a little or whether it was a major distraction. And some distractions that come are serious and some not so serious. But I found over the course of my life, when I have lost focus, it's generally because something else has come in that I decided to give my attention to, because that's really what it is. When distractions come, you have a choice that you can make. You can either stay focused on the goal that you have, or you can give in to the distraction. Because I remember somebody telling me one time that there's emergencies and then there's a distraction. An emergency has to be attended to, because of the magnitude of what it is. But the distractions most often are subtle and they creep up on you and they get you out of your lane. And then when you look up, you realize you're off course, and now I got to do double the work to get back to focus on what I was intentionally going towards anyway.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes I remember hearing, how not Michael. Who's the Apple guy? Steve Jobs. And we just talked about focus in one of the episodes. But I remember him saying, and I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, but it's not just saying yes to what it is you're going to focus on, but it's also saying no to some of that other stuff. And sometimes distractions don't come and say, hey, I'm a distraction, here I am. A distraction sometimes is a detour that's dressed up like a duty. So it could be something that, it looks like, this is something I have to do or that I need to do, or somebody's not going to be happy with me if I don't, get this done, or I'm going to just, I'm going to just do this for 15, 20 minutes. And the next thing you know, you done been distracted for over an hour. And what happens is, it will look like there are things, even good things, sometimes can be something that you don't need to do or that's going to take you away from what you should be doing. So it's important for us to really pay attention to, what is this a distraction? And sometimes you need to ask, is this going to detour me off the path that I'm supposed to be on? Or is this really going to help me fulfill the goal that I need to? Or if I do this right now, how long will it take me to be able to get what I needed, what I said I was going to focus on done? Sometimes you've got to ask yourself those questions, because a distraction can look like a detour. Can be a detour that looks like it's a duty. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you really need to ask yourself so you can define it and be clear about it.
Okay. So thinking about this, and like I said, my frame of reference, I have a lot of frame of references, but I'll just use myself. I remember there were times where, we really needed to get some things done, and somebody would call and say, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And, me, out of a sense of duty, would do it. And now that I think about it now, it was a distraction, because what happened was, in a lot of those cases, what I should have been doing and focusing on, I didn't. And I totally put it down, kind of like I mentioned earlier, and never got back to it. And so therefore, task was not completed. Now, what I did, in reference to what you just said, it was something good, but it still was a distraction. It was nothing that needed to happen right then and right there. What I should have said was, you know what? Give me a couple of hours. Give me a couple of days. Can you wait till then, so I can, again, make the main thing, and move me closer to the goal, and then if they can't wait that 2 hours or that 2 days or whatever the case may be, well then, that may be an indication. I'm not saying all the time, but it may be an indication where they need to find somebody else to do it, or I'm not the one to do it at that time. So I think at a certain point, when you're focused on any goal, you have to create boundaries so distractions, don't become a major. They stay in the background, or you limit them or don't have them at all.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes we don't want to add, thinking about that, Brian, gosh, I can't tell you how many times we've been in a position where we were planning for something. We were asked to do something, and we did the something that we were asked to do, and it took us off track with what we had planned, what our goal was. And so sometimes I think just asking the question, like when something is presented to you as, hey, can you do this? You can ask a couple of questions. One, you can say, hey, is this the only option that I do? Do we have any other options? Because sometimes there are other options. They just aren't, it's easy to go back to, I would say we've always been go-to people, right? Like we've been the go-to resource. So a lot of times people would ask us about doing things and we do it. And we felt good to be able to do it and to, if they call on us, if you come to the guys, it's going to get done. Like that's always been something for us. And I think it's been a badge of honor for us too, where it's like, okay, hey, we going to make sure that whatever we set our hands to, we going to set our hands to the plow. We ain't going to look back, and we're going to move it forward. And because of that, more opportunities come. But sometimes those wonderful opportunities that come sometimes can separate you from what you should be doing at this time. And sometimes we don't ask God, hey, God, should I be doing this? Number two, so asking when you've been requested to do something that would take you off of your goal. Are there any other options? And then the other thing that you can ask is, when does this need to be turned around? Because sometimes it's the time, and sometimes we'll drop whatever it is that we're doing so we can immediately respond to something. And it might not necessarily need an immediate response. It can be we can get it done by this date response, and then that allows you to still have that room and that flexibility for what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And you're not immediately taken off track, but it gives you that ability to, hey, I can do this, but here's the timing for it. I'll move it forward at that time. And so sometimes it's just asking those questions. Don't feel like you have to immediately respond with the yes right now. Sometimes it's not at this time.
That's good because timing is very, very important. Mm-hmm. We know spiritually, absolutely, timing is very, very important. Being sensitive, to what the Holy Ghost is saying when he's speaking, mm-hmm, and moving when he says move, and all of those sorts of things. It makes me think about, like some of the major, things that come dressed up. It doesn't look like a distraction, but it really is. Yeah. And I know for me, sports is a distraction. Mm-hmm. I could be watching it could be the two worst teams in the NFL playing, and I know the game is going to be horrible. And I know I probably should go in there and get some work done, but because I like football so much, I'm still going to watch that horrible game that ends up being something like 6-3, 3 field goals in the game. Somebody kicked 2, somebody kicked 1, the one that kicked 2 won the game 6-3. It was a horrible game when I could have been, mm-hmm, further down the line on accomplishing a goal that we have. So, for me, it's sports. I know for a lot of people, it's family. For a lot of people, it's friends. For a lot of people, it's social media. And I know some people are down on social media and all that, and it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay, until Jesus comes back. But it can be a distraction, especially. But here's what I found out though. When you get really, really laser focused, and you say, hey, I want, like we hear this every week, well, we hear it a lot at church. If you want something different, do something different. Change begins with you. It begins with me. So when I decide, and we talked about what decide is, in previous episodes, but when I decide that what God has placed in me and what I really want to have happen and want to accomplish, that good work that he started, the spiritual work and the natural work that he gave to me to fulfill, when I really get focused in on that, then distractions will tend to become less and less, because the impact of what he wants me to do clearly outweighs these distractions that come. So now, like you mentioned before, it's easier for me to say no to other people, but it's even easier to me to say no when I see something coming new out on Netflix that I really want to see. Or it's a championship game coming up. Man, should I burn these 3 hours watching this game, or should I use this 3 hours? Now, the Lord may say, hey, you know what, Brian, because you have put all these other distractions down, go ahead and enjoy the Super Bowl, without any condemnation coming into your mind, which is what he did this year. So I was able to watch the Super Bowl and everything. But had he told me not to watch the Super Bowl and go do some work, I would have done it.
Yeah. You know what, here's something that I think is really key. Distractions a lot of time will cost you. Distractions cost you. And they cost you in time, in peace, and in purpose. Like, you really have to, I'm going to recommend that you take an inventory of what might your distractions be. List the top 5 so that you can really drill down on what is it costing me. Because kind of to your point, one of the things is, and the reason I say kind of ask questions, because sometimes it's asking the question to yourself. It isn't that other people are always asking you and distracting you. Sometimes you the distraction, you can allow,
exactly,
stuff to distract you on your own. So then you have to ask you a question, because I believe that you could do, if you know that the Super Bowl is coming up, or we ain't even gonna say the Super Bowl, everybody's watching the Super Bowl. Now, if God told you not to, then you don't. But if you know that it's coming forward, hey, what can I do now so that I can get this accomplished on my goal, the week ahead of time, so that when the Super Bowl comes on, my peace isn't even going to be at the expense of this thing that I'm planning on doing, because I've prepared for it. So a lot of times, when you think about, hey, a distraction can take you off and it can cost you. I'm saying, you know what, let's prepare for it so that it's already planned. And I'm going to get, maybe now you have, this is my objective. I want to get these things done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all of my action steps. I'm going to eat all my frogs in the early part of the week. I'm going to, do my time blocking so that I can cover all the things that I need to make happen. If it's a 1 to 5 list of things that I need to get done, I'm going to get these things done so that it makes room for me to be at peace. So then that way, whatever it is that I have chosen to do is part of the plan. So even if you decide that, social media, hey, you need to watch it and see what's going on out there, because you want to be able to provide some content around things that are happening, that are new news, that are, interesting, that's going viral, and you want to capitalize on that and be able to share, go ahead and do it. But you know what? Social media scrolling happens between 1 and 2 o'clock. That's it.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be between 5 and 9, and that's it. So that it's already part of the plan. So now I am making detours for distractions so that they're not going to trip me up and cost me in that timepiece or my purpose, because I'm planning for it and it's not going to take me off track.
You know, that's very good, because it makes me think of, I like watching sometimes the nature shows and things like that. And I know sometimes when people in nature, when they're out there, and let's just say, you know, you're camping somewhere and it's raining and it's a lot of rain. And what I would see people do is, you know, to keep their campground from getting flooded, you know, they would go get a shovel or a small shovel. And what they would do is they would make these, they would dig these trenches. Away from the main camp for the water to go around. And so, exactly to your point, you know, you have to make these trenches, these boundaries, whatever you want to call it, around the main thing. So when things come, they just go around, but they don't hit you. You're not susceptible to it. And I think a lot of times too, I'll just say it like this, you know, the breakthrough is a mile away, but there's a distraction at a quarter mile, there's a distraction at a half a mile, and there's another distraction at 3/4 of a mile. But your breakthrough is a mile away. So I got to limit the distractions or eliminate the distractions to actually get to the breakthrough, because like you said, it's going to cost you. You know, it's either going to take longer, you know, you're going to have to work harder to get back on the right course and all of those things. And, you know, we're just saying you don't have to do that. You know, if you're aware and cognizant of it up front, you know, especially if you're younger, learn this up front, you know, just to limit the distractions, you know, to make a buffer around yourself, create boundaries, learn to create boundaries earlier, you know, for your time, you know, your attention, you know, and the things that you want to do. I think it's very critical, you know, the younger you learn that, I believe the more successful you'll be in whatever it is you're attempting to do.
Oh, 100%. You know what I was thinking about? You know, sometimes we forget, you know, and this is for Bible believers. This is for, you know, those who profess Christ. And we know that there is an enemy, right? Who's crouching at the door. He's looking for whom he may devour, right? So we got a real enemy. And sometimes we forget about that. But I will tell you this, if the enemy can't destroy you, he'll distract you, right? Like he will do everything that he can to keep you away from staying on that God-given course, staying on that goal, staying on track to accomplish what it is that is the purpose of your life. So don't get an enemy room. Like, just like you said, and I like the fact, I remember building trenches in the Army and having setting up the camp. That wasn't the funnest part for me. But I will tell you that if you can, for yourself, and everybody has them. Everybody has distractions. You'll be fooling yourself if you think that you don't. We all do. But knowing what they are, self-awareness, number one. And then number two, make a plan to reduce or limit the distractions you have in your life. And it will actually help you. If you want to 10x your income, your peace, your health, your vitality, take an inventory of what those distractions are that get in the way of any of those things, and you'll be able to make yourself so much better in a shorter amount of time than you ever realized. So, I don't know, distractions, man, they can take you on a ride that you can't get off. But the truth of it is that those rides will stop when you want them to.
Yes, I think it really comes down to, you know, like what do you want? You know, I think you mentioned it earlier, you know, what is it that you're good at? You know, what do you want your life to look like, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you know, 20 years from now? You know, if you have children, what do you want their lives to look like? You know, for some of us, you know, about to enter into the grandparent phase, or you may already be in it. What do you want your your grandchildren's futures to look like? And this is kind of, grand scale, but I know for us, I'm already thinking about that now. We don't have any grandchildren, but wouldn't it be great for them to have options, on what they wanted to do, for them to grow up, and like our kids did, seeing us do entrepreneurial things and have entrepreneurial pursuits, but not be limited, by finance or anything that's out there that's happening. It doesn't matter because, where we are and things that were set up for them, is already in place.
Yeah.
You think about the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and the Kennedys and that generational money that they have and how their kids don't have to work. They have options. They can go into business. They can go to school. They can do whatever it is they want to do because somebody was focused 3-4 generations back and made that much of an impact and a difference. And they didn't let everything that was going on around them affect that goal of, hey, I want this, whether it's wealth, whether it's money, no matter what it is, I don't want anything to be able to prohibit them. And so I'm going to focus now on what's important.
Yeah.
And not be distracted.
Yeah.
And not give in to things that are time stealers and time robbers. And, you hear about the dream thieves and all that sort of thing. People can be one of the greatest distractions. It's not always social media and TV. People can be a distraction. A lot of people got that one friend in the car, they want to talk for 3 hours. You should be working.
Yeah.
Working on your goals.
Right. You know what? And being able to speak up for them. You know what? You said something that reminded me of, how sometimes I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and the guest said, that he doesn't listen to a lot of bad news, right? Like, and he calls the news bad news because mostly that's what is projected. And so he said that somebody had asked him, well, how do you stay current on what's going on in the world? How do you take care of it? And he said, and I loved how he responded to the question, but he said, if you can't take care of and fix the things that are happening in your world, then how will you ever be able to really have an impact on what's happening in the world? And he was really, his primary point was really staying focused on what it is that you're supposed to do. If you can spend your time really dialed in to what it is that you need to do to leave that inheritance for your children's children, to be able to make it so that they have opportunities and the ability to do the things that they want to do without the stress, without a lot of being in danger or and sometimes not the danger of getting hurt or killed, but sometimes the danger of staying distracted, you can really make a huge difference. And so I just liked how he responded to that question. It was like, if you know what, a lot of times people do spend time on the telephone talking to people who they can't help your life and you can't necessarily help theirs. We're just having a conversation, chit chat about things that we're not going to do anything with. Curtail those type of conversations. Curtail that time that you spend in doing that. And if you really want to focus on, or if you really want to make strides forward, spend the time doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm making a joke, honestly. This really is a joke, but listen, if you like talking and you really got something to say, or you really feel like you got something to say, then just start a podcast.
Start a podcast. Absolutely.
I mean, just start a podcast. But, I think it's difficult for people to say no to people, to things and situations. I really think it's hard. I remember that there was a time when it was very hard for us. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying we still don't struggle with it sometimes, but it's just hard sometimes saying no. But when you develop the ability to start saying no to something, especially to something that may be good, but it may not be good for you right now, you are on your way, to living the life that you really want to have, or that God would desire for you to have, because the Bible does say, if you delight yourself in him, he'll give you the desires of your heart. And some of that is natural. We like to travel. I like to travel more than I like having things, honestly. So if I could go on a trip every month, I probably would. And I was always that kid that didn't like coming back home. So what does that tell me? That tells me if I want to have an unlimited budget traveling, there are some things that I need to do and set in place, because we know we can go travel right now and have a really good time, but if I want to have an unlimited budget of travel, then I need to set up some things, and do some things that will lend itself to me doing that, so that made me, hey, you know what? Let's just go charter a plane and go to Fiji. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
I'm willing to go though. Go ahead and throw it out there and let's go.
But the charter a plane, I know, to go to Fiji, I already looked at it. It's $45,000 to $50,000 off the top.
Which means that if you want to spend that kind of money doing that type of thing, what is it that you have to do on the back end to help you get there? And I think that's what we're talking about in this particular episode is, what is it that you need to do in order for you to be able to live the way that you really want to live? You can start a business. You can start some type of income producing things that can help you get there. But you will never get there if, one, you never get started, or two, you get started but you get distracted. So the goal here is, we want you to do the things that you really want to do and live the life that you really want to live, but you're going to have to, distractions is something you're going to have to deal with in order to be able to do it. You can do anything that you want to do. All you have to do is make a plan to do it, to get it done.
Follow through.
That's it. You guys, I'm telling you, the time goes by so quickly. So make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe. We want to thank you for tuning into this episode. Drop us some comments, if you will. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Brian to close us out.
As always, some people are meant to create a small business. Some people are meant to create a large business. And some people are meant to create empires. Which one are you?